My name is Sowjanya. I'm working as a Boomi developer in Techie GitHub Software Solutions. Today, I'm going to present a topic on how to implement one-way SSL in Boomi. So, before going in detail about the implementation of one-way SSL, let us understand what is data encryption, why we need to encrypt the data, the role of private key and the public key in data encryption, what are certificates, and at last, one-way SSL. Let me tell you a scenario. Like nowadays, we are performing most of the operations like the banking transactions, online payments to various apps like the Phone Pay, Paytm, etc. Everything we are performing over the internet. Very sensitive information like our account details and the passwords, which cannot be shared with anyone. But what if the data is transferred as a plain text over the internet? There might be chances the hackers may intervene in the middle and they get access to the data and they might use that data for a wrong purpose. So it is a big problem. So it is necessary to secure the data that is being transmitted over the internet. So this is where the data encryption came into picture. What is data encryption? Data encryption is the process of converting a plain text into an unreadable format. It is used to protect the data that is being transmitted over the internet and make sure that data doesn't fall into the hands of the hackers or the cyber criminals. So here is one example like, hi, how are you? It is converted into an unreadable format. So even if the hackers got access to this data, they don't understand like what exactly the data means. So this is the advantage of data encryption. So in order to encrypt the data and to secure the communication between client and the server, we are using SSL. So what is SSL? SSL means Secure Sockets Layer. It is a cryptographic protocol and a standard security technology for establishing secured communication between a server and a client, typically a website and a browser. It provides encryption to protect the sensitive information from hackers. And in order to provide the encryption and to secure the communication between a client and a server, it will make use of keys and the certificates. So the keys and certificates plays a major role in SSL. What is a key? A key is a value that uses some algorithms like the RSA, DSA to convert the plain text into an unreadable format. And in keys also, we have two types like the private key and the public key. So coming to public key, it is used for encrypting the data and the private key is used for decrypting the data. And in order to store these keys, whether might be a public key or a private key, we have some stores like the trust store and the key store. In trust store, all the public keys will be stored, and in key store, all the private keys will be stored. And both the client and the server have their own trust stores and the key stores. And public key can be shared with everyone, but private key cannot be shared with anyone. It has to be kept confidential. So now we have the public key, but how to identify a particular public key belongs to a specific individual or an organization. So this is the role of a certificate. A certificate is a unique digitally signed document which authoritatively identifies the identity of an individual or an organization. It will bind the public key to the owner and will help us to identify to whom the public keys actually belongs to and to whom we are communicating with. And the certificates are created by the certification authorities like the GoDaddy, Verisign. So in SSL, we have two types like one-way SSL and two-way SSL. In two-way SSL, both the client and the server will verify each other's identity before the actual data is getting to be transmitted. Coming to one-way SSL, In one-way SSL, only the client will verify the server's identity to ensure that the client is communicating with the intended server and it is receiving the data from the intended server. So how exactly this one-way SSL will take place? So this picture helps us to understand the workflow of one-way SSL. So let me explain in detail. Like first, the client will send request for the resources on the server. So this initiates the SSL handshake process. In SSL handshake, there will be a series of steps which has to be taken place before the actual data is getting transmitted between a client and a server. So in handshake process, the client will send hello message to the server. Then the server will respond with hello message, and along with that, it will share its public certificate to the client. Now the client will verify the public certificate of the server by looking into its trust tool. If the certificate is not a valid certificate, then immediately the communication is stopped. But if the certificate is a valid certificate, then the client will generate a symmetric session key and it will encrypt that symmetric session key with the help of private key of the server and it will send to the server. Now the server it receives the encrypted symmetric session key sent by the client and it will decrypt that symmetric session key by using its own private key. Now both the client and server have the same symmetric session key. Now this symmetric session key is used for both encrypting the data and decrypting the data in one-way SSL. So this picture represents the actual data transformation over the internet with the help of that symmetric session key. Now we will see like how to implement that one-way SSL in Boomi. Let us go to integration. And here I have created one API, sample API, and I just deployed to my Atom. In Boomi, the shared web server acts like a server. So in Atom, we have the shared web server. So this shared web server acts like a server, and the API which I exposed is deployed to this server. So we can see now the URL is HTTP, which means it is not secure. When I click on SSL, we can see that HTTP is changed to HTTPS, which means the communication is secure. So in order to implement that, in the shared web server, we have to choose the API type as basic and authentication has to be none. And we have to click on the SSL. And here we have to choose the private certificate of the server. Save the changes. Now go back to the process. Here I am using the HTTP client connector to consume the API which is exposed. So in the connection component, we can see the SSL options. Here we have two options like the client SSL authorization and the trust SSL certificate. So here we are going to add the public certificate of the server. So we have to click on this option and I have already added the server public certificate. Now save and close. Now let me run the process. So here we can, so here we can see that the process got executed successfully. This is how to implement a one-way SSL in Boomi. Thank you.